Hello, I'm Mark, and the purpose of this video is to try to recreate the the workshop that I ran as the third session for our Thursday group academic writing class. I don't usually record the sessions because the idea is that they are interactive and involve writing and discussion, and that can be quite personal. And also, it's I want to emphasize that you gain a lot more from participating in a group discussion and sharing your writing with other people, whether it's in my session or not, than just trying to watch a video of some other people doing it. However, there were some things that came up in this session that, or I thought, wouldn't be too personal and would be might be useful for people to watch in their own time. But the recording was still quite personal, especially with like the contributions of like family members in rooms and things like that. So yeah, in this video, I will go through the steps that we went through in the workshop. Sometimes I'll ask you to pause the video so you can think or read what's on the screen and do a task. But I'll aim to get through things quite quickly, so you might want to pause uh, quite a lot. In the future, if you're not able to attend workshops live and participate, I will try to make some very short videos which just introduce a writing task, because I think it's really important that in a writing class you do some writing and you learn from the experience of doing that. So, in the first two meetings that we've had of the Thursday evening group this semester, uh, we have talked about critical writing, or what it means to think critically and to write critically. And I've kind of introduced a system whereby I show a picture or a couple of pictures, or I show you some text, and I ask two questions, two simple questions, which is, what do you notice and what do you wonder? So noticing is about like just observing and describing what you see. Um, and wondering is about asking questions of an image or asking questions of uh, of a of a text. So when we looked at, you can apply those questions to this image right here, like what do you notice about this picture? What do you wonder about it? So people made observations in the live workshop about the clothes and the objects and the body language of these people. They kind of speculated on who they might be, what their personalities were like, what their to relationship to one another was, what the object in the middle of the in the lower half of the screen might be, um, as well as how this piece of art might have been painted and how old it is. Um, when we answer those questions, what do you notice and what do you wonder? There are no wrong answers, but it does start to open up opportunities for critical thinking and critical and analytical exploration. So what we found out about this painting is that it's called The Ambassadors. It's by an artist called Hans Holbein the Younger. It's very old, 1533. You can see it in the National Gallery, which is the large gallery that overlooks Trafalgar Square in central London. It's free. I recommend that you go there. It's a wonderful place. And this is a wonderful picture to spend some time in front of and actually kind of at the side of, because there's a there's a kind of trick of the artist in this painting that if you view it from certain angles, you see a three-dimensional skull as a kind of what might be called a memento mori, a kind of like a reminder of death, um, despite whatever accomplishments we have in life as travelers, musicians, scientists, readers, and so on. So yeah, you can pause the video and read the description from the National Gallery if you like there. And then I introduced a second paragraph of text, which comes from an author called Ian McGilchrist, who spent 10 years writing a book about the brain called The Master and His Emissary. And Ian McGilchrist, his argument is really about the kind of forces of and almost like the personalities of the brain, and that the left side of the brain is concerned with details, and the right side of the brain is concerned with the bigger picture and sees the bigger picture. And McGilchrist tries to kind of plot Western history in terms of where the modes of thinking and operation in a particular era might have been more kind of right-brained or more left-brained. And McGilchrist argues that at the moment we're living in an era where the kind of left brain is a bit more dominant, and we tend to see details without seeing the bigger picture, and that has some problems for us. And he makes the point, or his argument, or his analysis of this painting is that it represents a time in the history of Western thought, at least the kind of early Renaissance, when the right brain, so the bigger picture, starts to have a bit more impact and influence on the way we think. And so his interpretation of this painting is that, okay, so we have all of these details that represent the lives of these men and their status and their position, their power, their skills, what does he say? He writes, they're two handsome, clever, self-confident young men at the height of their power, surrounded by the symbols of their knowledge, sophistication, and prosperity. But he's painted it in such a way that if you were viewing this painting like while coming down a staircase, you would see a three-dimensional skull looming large in the lower half of the painting, which is kind of like a remind. It's not actually it's not suggesting this is a negative thing to be reminded of death or like the finiteness of life. Sorry. More that if we have this reminder that living in the world eventually leads towards death, perhaps that helps us to kind of seize the moment and enjoy and appreciate things while we can. Okay, so what I've done there is try to show you an example of how we move from our own observations and thoughts and questions and wonder about a work of art. We looked at a fairly clear but straightforward description of what we saw, and then we started to look at a kind of an analysis of it, something that is an example of critical writing, because it's based on taking a theory or an idea and applying it to the world, to an object, to a piece of art. Um, um, I included this because in the first two sessions this semester, we've had conversations about academic writing, where academic writing involves referencing and things like that. But I think some of the participants in the sessions were focusing maybe a bit too much on, is this a problem because this text is like 12 years old or 11 years old, and or this person doesn't have enough references, and this person is only using one reference, but kind of missing the fact that what a good writing that we were looking at in previous weeks was doing was taking an idea from theory and applying it to a different situation, taking a framework and applying it to a case, or to the real world, to a real world question. And that's really kind of what we're often asked to do in university assignments. We're asked to take our reading and our understanding and apply it to an essay question or an assignment question, which we'll see an example of shortly. So what we did next, we just consider that there are probably some frameworks you're already familiar with, even if just a little bit. So I asked if people were aware of frameworks like psychoanalysis, like Freudian frameworks for thinking and analysis, or post-colonial, historicist, Marxist, feminist, any other ists or isms. Um, and hopefully what we saw was that we can take any of these kind of theories and ways of looking at the world and apply it to this picture. Um, we discussed in the workshop that a kind of a feminist reading of this painting would focus in some ways on what isn't in the painting. There are no women in the painting. Why is there a complete absence of women? Why are these men so powerful? Why are these men uh, taking up these positions and showing off their possessions in this way? And what does this mean about like the role or of women in their world? A post-colonial analysis might be you might consider the fact that the equipment that we see in this picture that speaks to them having knowledge of things like music and the arts, but also about kind of traveling the world, is a very clear reminder that white European men like this uh, put a kind of stamp on the rest of the world and took their ideas about knowledge and art and kind of imposed it elsewhere um, through that ability to travel and to kind of exert their power on other people. Um, and we might also consider that the fact that this painting is in a national gallery in London, which was once the capital of the largest colonial empire in the world, um, and is a collection of, like other museums in London, is a collection of art that's been gathered from the rest of the world. That perhaps we still live we still live very much with the impact of the kind of things that these men were involved in, even though it's almost 500 years ago. Okay, but that's enough about art. If you get the chance, please do go and visit the National Gallery and admire the beauty of this painting, but ask questions of any kind that you like of it. What we did next in the workshop was we looked at another ism, much more closer to home and more mundane, perhaps, and less beautiful. And that ism that we spoke about was uh, plagiarism. And we looked at an essay that you may have seen at the start of your studies at the University of Hertfordshire, because I created a short essay task where, just as a way of introducing students to the idea of writing from sources, we invite them to produce a 500-word essay answering the question, how is plagiarism defined at the University of Hertfordshire, and to what extent is plagiarism in university assignments an act of deliberate cheating? This is actually one of two questions that we invite students to answer. We provide 4 readings, and we say, please only use these readings. They're short extracts, and it's really just to, well, there's 2 purposes. One is to introduce ideas about plagiarism and academic integrity, which will not be the same all over the world, and which some students, well, a lot of students, won't really have met before. And is also to introduce this idea that when we write at university, we write from sources. We write based on our reading. The first thing we do when we try to answer a question is read and think about the reading. We don't, as came up in the workshop yesterday, we don't start by saying, well, what do I already think? And how can I find evidence to support what I already think? That's not education, and you're not going to get much pleasure or progress out of taking that approach. So I just wanted to share something. I wrote an answer to this question as an example of how you could do it in under 500 words. And this is a point where you might want to pause the video, because here are my first 4 paragraphs. of my 500-word essay, and I asked everyone in the workshop to decide what order they should come in. So pause the video now, you can read the paragraphs and decide on your order. Feel free to ask any questions about this via email after the end of the video. Okay, pause now, and I will now, hopefully you've unpaused, and I will move on with the key. This was what I did. So I start, because the question is how is plagiarism defined at the University of Hertfordshire, that's where I started. And then I had a paragraph just to say that, plagiarism covers a wide range of different activities and offences, and that, what I want to do is move. The essay is asking me two questions: how is plagiarism defined, and to what extent is it a deliberate act of cheating? So what I want to do is move from the University of Hertfordshire definition to that question of to what extent is that the same as cheating. So I move into this Turnitin definition, which says there are lots of different types of plagiarism, and some of them are kind of accidental cheating, some accidental plagiarism, which maybe is not cheating. Some of them, are really bad cases of cheating, like fabricating data or paying someone to write an essay for you. For me, that's the worst thing that you could do. It includes things like just using a machine to do the writing for you, which is a topic under a lot of discussion at the moment. So I go from University of Hertfordshire definition to a wider range of types, and then I have a paragraph where I consider that plagiarism isn't always a deliberate act of cheating, because it can be done by accident, or it can be done because a student has poor study habits. There might be just a mistake with punctuation, and it might be what we consider an unfortunate mistake, but not dishonest cheating. Then there's another paragraph that goes beyond the students and into what other factors which kind of make it easy to plagiarize and almost encourage it. So that includes the way that universities set assignments and give instructions. It might be when universities don't give any training to students, and when there's a lot of pressure, either from various places. If there's pressure on students to just get good grades and not to learn, then it might encourage them to cheat. And then I ask, okay, so what's missing from the essay so far? Okay, and one person says references. So, okay, there are the references. But what I hope you saw was missing from my essay is that there's no final answer really to that second question: to what extent is plagiarism in university assignments an act of deliberate cheating? And here, if you would like to do some writing, you can go through those 4 paragraphs I've written again, see if you can add a final paragraph. So the word limit is 500 words. So far I've written 337. You have 163 words or fewer to complete the essay. How would you do that? You might want to pause now and just think about what you would include in that, what you expect to see in that, how you might do it. You might even want to take 10 minutes to do that piece of writing yourself. But I will continue with 3 suggested endings. So here is one. You could pause the video now and consider whether this is a good way to end the essay. As we discussed in the workshop, it's not a good way to end the essay. There's too much. So 180 words, we've gone over the word limit. There's a lot of repetition here, and there are kind of suggestions on how to prevent plagiarism. And that might be interesting, but the question didn't ask us to do this. Okay? And it's at this point that I reveal to the students in the workshop that this ending was written by ChatGPT, so it was written by an AI writing tool. I gave it the same instructions I just gave you. This is what it did. I'm not too impressed. So I asked it again. I said no. I gave it the same instructions and said no. Can you try that again? And this is what it produced. Again, you can pause and read. This time it wrote even more words, 185. There is a sense of conclusion. In conclusion, plagiarism is a serious academic offence that can be both deliberate and unintentional. So it's kind of implying that it's not always cheating. And then there's a kind of general statement about who is responsible, and how they're responsible to avoid plagiarism. That's still not quite the same as an answer to the question. So I'm sure that if you tried to write the ending yourself, you probably did a better job of ChatGPT. My own ending is actually quite short, and you can pause and read it if you like. I'll just explain that what I was aiming to do here is, sometimes when you can answer an assignment question by just challenging something within it as your final answer. And my final answer is that, of course, plagiarism might be intentional or it might be accidental, but if we go back to the university rules, then it doesn't matter because unintentional plagiarism can still be punished in the same way that intentional plagiarism is. And so my final question is actually there's no material difference between deliberate or unintentional misconduct. So I hope you like that. I'm not suggesting it's perfect, but it was a way to answer that question. And since I set the question, then I guess I should be able to give what I think is a good answer. That's all from me for now. If you, if you're interested, if if you want to ask any questions about this, you can email me on m.holloway3@herts.ac.uk. And if you get the chance to attend a future Thursday evening workshop, it would be great to see you. Thank you very much. Bye bye.